I'm tired of all these stories. These neo-colonial civil servants who have been holding us back, I have put my foot down. Say, I don't want to hear those stories. And Uganda is developing, and it will develop, because I don't entertain that nonsense anymore. I banned the export of minerals from Uganda. So when I banned them, they are flocking in now.
We cannot continue as a country and continent whereby we send our resources to be processed in other countries, which means we are importing.
Good day, Africa. Good day, world. Welcome to a special broadcast that marks the beginning of a historic turning point. What you are about to hear is not just news, it is the awakening of a continent long underestimated, a revolution in policy, and a declaration of independence that is shaking the very pillars of Western economic power. Today, 10 bold African nations have taken a decision that will forever be etched in the annals of global trade history. These nations have stood shoulder to shoulder and said no more. No more will our gold be shipped away unrefined. No more will our lithium fuel foreign factories while our youth remain jobless. No more will our cocoa become European chocolate while African farmers starve. No more will our destiny be outsourced. Ladies and gentlemen, these 10 African nations have officially banned the export of raw materials to the West. This move, monumental, courageous, and overdue, is already sending shockwaves through Western capitals. From Paris to London, Washington to Brussels, nervous boardrooms and rattled government departments are scrambling to respond. Because what they fear most is now happening, Africa is saying no to exploitation and yes to value, dignity, and development. Let us take a moment to understand why this decision is so powerful and why it is shaking the Western economic order to its core. For over a century, Africa has been treated not as a partner, but as a resource. A continent stripped bare by colonialism, and then cleverly tied into neo-colonial economic structures under the guise of trade, aid, and diplomacy. The West got used to one simple arrangement: Africa digs and they dine. Africa mined the gold, the West wore the jewelry. Africa harvested the cocoa, the West sold the chocolate. Africa pumped the oil, the West fueled their cities. Africa exported the cotton, the West wore the fashion. And in return, African nations were buried under IMF loans, conditional aid, and constant debt traps. But now that system is breaking, and it's breaking because Africa is choosing to rise on its own terms. The 10 nations leading this new movement: Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Darcy, Niger, Angola, Guinea, and Namibia, have declared that their raw resources will no longer leave their shores without value being added at home. They have launched a continent-wide economic policy revolution, and their people, from miners to youth entrepreneurs, are standing behind them. President Captain Ibrahim of Burkina Faso, one of the youngest and most fearless leaders on the continent, has been a strong voice in this shift. In his recent address, he made it clear: Africa is no longer a warehouse of raw materials. Africa is the factory. Africa is the refinery. Africa is the solution. These leaders understand something very simple yet extremely powerful. It is not the resource that builds a nation, it is the processing. It is the production. It is the value addition. The wealth is not in the cocoa pod, it is in the chocolate bar. The money is not in the gold, or it is in the bullion and finished product, and for too long that value has gone elsewhere. But that ends now. And why does this terrify the West? Because Western economies, for the better part of the last century, have been structurally dependent on cheap African resources. Their tech industry needs Congolese cobalt. Their aerospace industry needs Zimbabwean lithium. Their energy sector needs Nigerian and Angolan oil. Their luxury goods thrive on Ghanaian gold and Ivorian cocoa. So what happens when Africa says, no more freebies, no more raw deals? What happens when Africa starts to build its own processing plants, refineries, and tech industries? The answer is simple: the West trembles. And we are already seeing the early signs. Markets are reacting, CEOs are panicking, trade ministers are calling emergency meetings. Western diplomats are flying into African capitals, begging for renegotiation, proposing soft incentives, and in some cases threatening consequences. But it's too late. Africa has awakened. This ban on raw exports is not just economic policy, it's political resistance. It's cultural reclamation. It is the long-awaited declaration that Africa's time is now, that no foreign empire, no multinational corporation, no external donor will dictate Africa's terms any longer. And what's most impressive is that this decision didn't come from Western consultants, nor from billion-dollar think tanks. It came from Africa itself, from the farmers, the miners, the youth, the policymakers who are tired of waiting, tired of hearing promises, tired of being the world's supplier without ever becoming a stakeholder in the global economy. Let's be clear, this decision will not be easy. There will be challenges. There will be pushback. The West will not give up its grip quietly, but this is the price of sovereignty. This is the cost of dignity. And for the first time in a long time, African nations are willing to pay it for the sake of their people and the future generations to come. Already, we are seeing investments in local refining technology, in industrial parks, in training centers for metallurgy, processing, and advanced manufacturing. The African Continental Free Trade Area is gaining momentum. Nations are trading more with one another, building a pan-African supply chain that removes the middleman of European ports and American warehouses. This is what Pan-Africanism looks like in real time, and to the youth of Africa watching this broadcast, this is your moment. The jobs you've been praying for, the industries you've been dreaming of, the future you've been fighting for, they are now within reach. Your continent is choosing to believe in itself. Will you rise with it? To the African diaspora, long separated by colonial borders and oceans of forced migration, know that the drumbeat of Africa's power is sounding once again. Your homeland is no longer just calling for you to return, it is building the kind of home worth returning to and to the world. Africa is not at war with you, but we are no longer willing to be at war with ourselves for your profit. We seek partnerships, not paternalism. We seek respect, not sympathy. We demand fair trade, not exploitation. This is the new Africa, unapologetic, united, unshaken. This is just the beginning. Stay tuned as we take a deeper dive into how these 10 nations are implementing their policies, the industries rising on the ground, and what this means for the next generation of African economies.
Welcome to Talk of Africa 360, your source for insightful news, analysis, and thoughtful commentary. If you value informed perspectives and fact-based reporting, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is based on reliable public sources and credible online information. It is intended strictly for educational and analytical purposes. We do not promote or endorse political violence, hate speech, or any form of discrimination. Our goal is to inform, not to inflame. Thanks for being here. Let's stay informed together.
Good day to all our global viewers and listeners. This is a breaking special report, one that is already sending tremors through the world of international politics and global economics. What you are about to hear may redefine the next century of global trade, shift power balances, and usher in a new dawn of African economic independence. Today, we are witnessing history in motion. 10 sovereign African nations have declared a bold and unified stance. No more raw exports to the West. Yes, you heard that right. These nations, rich in mineral wealth, agricultural potential, and industrial promise, have just closed the door to the age-old practice of exporting their raw resources for foreign exploitation. The message is loud and clear. Africa is no longer the world's warehouse. For centuries, the African continent has been a treasure trove of natural wealth. From gold to bauxite, cocoa to timber, lithium to oil, Western countries have built towering economies on the back of African raw exports. But the tides are turning. The leaders of these 10 African countries have stepped into history, rejecting the extractive economic models imposed upon them since colonial rule. This movement didn't happen overnight. It is the result of years of rising awareness, economic awakening, and Pan-African solidarity. It stems from leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, João Lourenço of Angola, and now a coalition that includes Ghana, Mali, Niger, Tanzania, DRC, Zimbabwe, and others. These nations have come together to declare, we will no longer export unprocessed raw materials that empower foreign economies and impoverish our own. Let us take a closer look at why this decision is causing panic across Western economic corridors and what it means for the future of global trade. For decades, Africa's gold was refined in Switzerland, its cocoa turned into luxury chocolates in Belgium, and its oil purified in the Middle East or America, only to be sold back to African nations at exaggerated prices. Africa's lithium-powered Western tech and its cobalt made billions for foreign car industries. Yet African producers remained poor, bound to debts from the IMF and World Bank, dependent on aid, and trapped in cycles of economic servitude. But now, a new vision is unfolding. By banning the export of raw minerals, these African countries are forcing a new model. They are mandating that minerals be processed on African soil. No more exporting raw cobalt without building battery factories in the Congo. No more shipping cocoa without chocolate processing plants in Ghana and Ivory Coast. No more gold leaving the continent without African refineries and jewelry industries emerging from it. And this, right here, is what the West fears most. You see, when Africa begins processing its own resources, it does more than keep wealth within its borders. It begins to create jobs. It builds value chains. It fosters industrialization. It raises the standard of living. It strengthens its currencies. It builds trade among African states. It births self-sufficiency. In short, it becomes independent. And for the Western powers who have long enjoyed Africa's dependence, this is an economic nightmare. Reports are already showing signs of pressure in major European markets. Mineral supply contracts are being frozen. Western tech giants are scrambling to source lithium and cobalt elsewhere, but none with the scale or richness of Africa. Chocolate companies are reeling from the upcoming processing mandates in West Africa. Gold and oil prices are swinging. And most importantly, diplomatic pressure is rising. But the leaders of this new Africa are standing strong. Take President Traoré of Burkina Faso. His recent statements declare a future where African youth will be proud to work in local factories rather than flee across deserts in search of jobs in foreign lands. His commitment to local industrial growth, infrastructure, and youth-led innovation is inspiring similar policies across the continent. In Ghana, new cocoa processing plants are under construction. In Tanzania, battery manufacturing lines are being designed. In Mali and Niger, uranium processing facilities are being proposed in partnership with African and Asian investors. Angola is building its own oil refining capabilities, and Zimbabwe has blocked all raw lithium exports unless it is processed locally. These are not isolated efforts. This is a movement, a united stand. What's truly remarkable is that this ban on raw exports is not just about economics. It's a cultural revolution. It's a rewriting of history. It's Africa reclaiming its seat at the global table not as a supplier, but as a producer. Now, the West is pushing back. From diplomatic visits to threats of trade sanctions, from secret negotiations to public pressure, everything is being thrown at these nations to reverse this ban. But Africa, at least this Africa, is not blinking. Why? Because the continent has options now. Gone are the days when African countries had to look westward for partnerships. Today, Africa is building strategic relationships with BRICS nations, especially Russia, China, India, Brazil, and South Africa. These new partners are offering better terms, technology transfer, infrastructure deals, refinery development, and educational exchange programs. Even within the continent, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is allowing for intra-African trade like never before. Local entrepreneurs are rising. African banks are investing in African businesses, and public sentiment is overwhelmingly behind these new policies. Let's not forget, these 10 countries may be the first wave, but they won't be the last. Countries like Algeria, Mozambique, Senegal, and Ethiopia are watching closely. And as the benefits become visible, more jobs, better wages, stable economies, the rest of Africa will follow. We are truly entering an era where Africa is deciding its destiny, not based on colonial leftovers or donor dictates, but based on vision, dignity, and sovereignty. The question now is not whether the West will adapt. It must. The question is how long they will continue resisting the inevitable. Africa is rising. Its people are awakening. Its leaders are transforming. And its resources will no longer be used to build foreign skyscrapers while its children sit in classrooms without roofs. We must applaud the courage of the 10 nations that have led the way. And we must support the people who are making this new future possible. So to the world, watch Africa closely. The time of begging is over. The era of exploitation is ending. A new generation of African leaders has risen, from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea, from the shores of the Atlantic to the peaks of Kilimanjaro, and they are unafraid. This isn't just a shift in policy. It's a shift in power. And as this wave continues, remember these words. Africa will no longer export raw hope. It will export finished strength. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us as we bring you more stories from the heart of Africa's awakening.
As reactions continue to pour in from across the continent, one thing is clear. Africa is demanding respect, sovereignty, and accountability. Was this just a diplomatic misstep or a deeper sign of shifting global alliances? We'll be watching closely. If you found this story important, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, unfiltered African news. This is Talk of Africa 360, telling the stories that matter.